Afternoon. I'd like to start the Civil Service Board regular meeting for June 2nd, 2020. This video is being viewed on the city's YouTube page. I'll start off by the introductory statement. Today's Civil Service Board meeting is being conducted virtually in accordance to the electronic meeting statutes to support the essential service of police and fire departments during the COVID-19 pandemic. This matter has been properly noticed, and all matters for consideration are properly before the board. All board members and city staff are asked to please be recognized by the chairman so we may make certain speakers, so we make certain speakers are clearly identified and heard. First off, so we got the number one. For the second, the approval of the agenda, I'd like to amend the agenda this afternoon. This amendment is to allow Ms. Andrea to speak to the email from
Call-in
Tom
user
Brewer.
4. Hello? Call-in user 4?
Okay, I'd like to, it is to allow Amanda to speak to the email from
Did
Tom
someone
Brewer
call in on a telephone?
from Firefighter Union.
Winkles?
Hello?
Okay.
This is Jessica Battle. I'm calling in via audio and phone and video.
Who is that?
This is Jessica Battle.
Okay, I'm going to have someone call you and walk you back in the right way. So I'm going to take you out of the phone mode.
Just FYI, I don't have computer audio.
That's fine.
So would someone be able to call me?
He can, he can talk you back in on how to do it the right way without any problem. And you can still use your phone. We just need to be able for you to do it so that it hooks to your name and into the panelist. Not a problem.
Okay.
It won't take but a second.
Okay. Thank you.
Thanks.
Okay, so again, I'd like to amend the agenda to speak to the email from Tom Brewer and the Firefighters Union. May I ask for a motion to amend the agenda?
You can talk you back in on how to do it the right way without any problem. You can still
Carolyn? May I ask for a motion to amend the agenda?
Jessica, what's your phone number? I don't.
Please raise your hand.
Can you chat? Do you know how to do that?
Yes. My phone number is 704. 1 second. I forgot.
704 what?
704.
This is Carolyn. I'm not getting any audio off the computer, so I'm having to watch this on YouTube.
Wait a minute. Jessica, do you know how to chat? Can you just chat and send me a chat and give me your number?
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you.
704.
We'll stand by as we have technical difficulties as we work through these.
Carolyn, I'm not getting any audio off the computer, so I'm having to watch this on YouTube.
When you computer, right?
Yes.
All right, stand by. So, all right, when you thought they were going.
I'm ready right now. Just send things. Said, are you ready to unmute?
Oh.
Wendy, I think you are unmuted because I'm hearing you in here. Guess I just texted her too.
Hey, Ryan.
Hello. Who's that?
Oh, can y'all hear me?
Miss Charlita, you're here. You're on. All right, great. All right, I think we got it. I think we got this fixed. So again, I'm going to start off with, I did read the chairman's introductory statement. I am asking for an amendment to, or a motion to amend the agenda to speak to the email from Tom Brewer and the firefighters union that you should have received today. Miss Andrea is going to give us a 30,000 foot kind of big picture of what's going on, and then what the next steps will be when everything's completed. So if you could raise your hand so I can call on you to make a motion to amend the agenda. Carolyn Millen. Carolyn. And I need a second. Miss Charlita.
Second.
Okay, so moved as amended. So now the request a motion to approve the agenda. Okay, looks like Doug.
Motion to approve?
All right, and I have a second. Anyone with their hand? Raise your hand. Okay, Miss Charlita, seconded. We'll go ahead and allow Miss Stephanie to go ahead and do a roll call.
Okay, Tom Baldwin. Is yes.
Present.
Charlita, we're voting on the motion. Charlita Hatch.
She's raising her hand.
Oh, okay. Kyle Clements.
Aye.
Okay. David McCleary.
Aye.
Ryan McGill.
Aye.
Carolyn Millen.
Aye.
Chris Reynolds.
Aye.
And Doug Young.
Aye.
Great. All right, we'll move on. So, Miss Andrea, we'll go ahead and insert that here now. Miss Andrea, can you please speak to what we discussed?
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just wanted to give you all an update as to where we are in this process. I know that you received a couple of emails from some individuals within the city. I know Mr. Nance and Mr. Brewer, to name a few. And I wanted to let you all know that there's been an HR task force formed that is looking into a number of the matters that were raised in both correspondence. This HR task force is comprised of various city officials and leaders across the city, and they are looking into a number of the matters that have been listed. And I would ask that you all, well, I shouldn't say I would ask, they have asked to be given the opportunity to look into a number of these items and to work through that process for these items that have. Can you all hear me?
We can now.
Great. Particularly with regard to Rule 9 and the city's charter and a lot of the policies that are associated with that. So that's where we are right now. I know that they have also spoken with some outside counsel as well with regard to pursuing the investigation that we're talking about here. So I think, Mr. Chair, at this point, there are parallel conversations transpiring concerning Rule 9, the charter, and some of the other concerns that were raised. And so the board may want to be aware of that in terms of how you all would like to move forward with hearing about these items.
Yeah, like we discussed, I think it's a good idea to allow the task force to complete what they are doing. We'll have them bring it to the board, and we can request, or we can ask Mr. Brewer and the firefighters union and whomever else to come and speak and let it speak to the board, so we know what's going on, and then we can make our decisions and discuss what we need to from there.
Yes, Mr. Chair, and I am working closely along with Mr. Baker with that task force and in terms of just the timeline, and I will keep you and Madam Clerk aware of that timeline, and we'll be happy to bring it back before this board at the appropriate time in terms of the timeline that they are proceeding on.
Do you know about how long they're looking at? A couple weeks, months?
I know that they are actively speaking with some consultants as well as I said outside counsel. I'm not sure about the timeline, and I'm hesitant to say that at this point. But I certainly can provide an update to the board either by email, certainly before the next meeting.
Great. Anyone on the board, if you want, please raise your hand if you have any questions for Ms. Andrea. You should be able to raise your hands on your computers. David McCleary?
Attorney Leslie Fight, do we have any obligation to respond to these letters in some sort of timely manner, or are they just allowed under statute to request an appearance before the board?
Mr. McCleary, they are to request an appearance, and in terms of placing it on your agenda, there's no statutory about the timeline for that. Certainly, we want to be responsive, but I would say that there's a phasal approach. Certainly, the ability to appear and just speak on the matter, and then of course the engagement piece. And what I think we're talking about right now is certainly allowing to do their work. But you're right. Yes, there is no statutory obligation for a timeline, but we will try to move along as quickly as possible.
And just a follow up to the task force, under what authority is the task force being appointed? Who is appointed? Like, who appointed the task force, and who do they answer to?
So the task force is a group of individuals compiled under the leadership of the manager's office. Ms. Charles is leading the way with that, along with forces representatives, some firefighter representatives, legals involved. But in terms of the appointment process, the manager's office has taken that leadership role in terms of gathering folks together.
With that, all I would say is I'd like it if we could have an update on the timeline by the next meeting. That doesn't necessarily mean that we need to know where they're at, but just so we can give Mr. Brewer some sort of timetable as to when we can respond to some of his serious allegations.
Sure. I will certainly forward that message. I believe some of those members of the task force are on the call today, but I will communicate that request for the timeline, and we'll have something to provide for you by your next meeting.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Deputy Chief Winkles is raised his hand.
Yes, can you hear me?
Can hear you now. Yes, sir.
Okay, I was just ensuring I've got Chief Johnson, Kim Sanders, our HR manager, and myself in here, and we were just ensuring that we had audio connection before we moved on, because I know that earlier we were having some hiccups on the technology side. But I'll put us back on mute, and you can continue. I was just ensuring that.
All right. Yes, sir. Thanks. Are there any other questions regarding this issue? Okay. Moving on. We're moving.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
You're welcome. Moving on to the approval of the minutes. If I may call for a motion to approve the CSB meeting of May 5th, 2020. And that would be for regular and closed.
Motion to approve.
Okay, Kyle has a motion to approve. May I have a second?
Second. This is Tom.
Tom. All right, seconded by Tom. Okay, we'll go roll call vote. All in favor, say aye, or we'll show.
Tom Baldwin,
Aye.
Charlita Hatch,
Aye.
Kyle Clements,
Aye.
David McCleary,
I think I'll abstain since I was not there.
Ryan McGill,
Aye.
Carolyn Millen,
Aye.
Chris Reynolds,
Aye.
and Doug Young.
Aye.
Unanimous.
Did you hear that? Okay, we'll move on to number 4, the CMPD presentation, policy and OSHA updates from Deputy Chief Patterson.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Stella Patterson. I am the Deputy Chief over Administrative Services here at CMPD, which includes our recruiting and hiring, as well as our professional standards unit that's over all of our policies and our directives. On the line with me also, too, is our police attorney, Jessica Battle, and our HR manager, Kamala Emanuel. And so I want to thank you all for allowing me just a space of time to be on this call to talk about a policy change that we recently implemented here at CMPD to our uniform and grooming standard policy. I believe that you all received the memorandum from Chief Putney regarding this change. And so we wanted to just talk to you about it. Firstly, let me say that this is a very timely change for us, given the pandemic, also to the civil unrest that we have been dealing with over the past 7 days. And it pertains to our officers' ability to don and wear their gas masks or their respiratory devices. So in the memorandum, we kind of try to spell out a little bit concerning the policy on this. One of the essential job duties of a police officer is to be able to don and properly wear their respiratory devices, the gas mask, the N95 mask. And in order to do that, you have to have a face-piece seal. And in order to have that, you have to be clean shaven. And so one of the biggest things that we have seen with our officers is that some have asked for an exception so that they don't have to be clean shaven. Certainly with this climate right now, that puts us in a bad position, one, for the safety of our officers, and then secondly, of course, from a liability standpoint. If our officers are dispatched to a call, a hazardous fire or something where they could be exposed to chemical agents, if they're not able to wear their gas mask and have it on properly, then of course there is a safety issue there for them. So because of that, we reevaluated our policy, and we realized that also too, we were out of compliance with OSHA regulations. So OSHA indicates, and the statute number for that is in the memorandum that we sent you, but paragraph number 1910.134 requires that anyone that dons a respiratory device must have a face-to-face piece seal. And when you allow somebody to not be clean shaven, to have a beard or such, then you are not able to get that seal. So as an organization, unfortunately, we have been operating outside of those guidelines, and we recognized immediately that we have to get back in compliance with OSHA. So as a result of that, in May of this year, we did correct that issue in our policy to outline very clearly that no beards, goatees, or anything that would interfere with that seal can be worn by our essential personnel. We sent the information out to them, and we gave them 30 days to get into compliance or to come into compliance. We are now reaching that mark, and the reason we wanted to speak to you about this policy change is because in the event that we have individuals who are not in compliant or do not become in compliant, then it would probably eventually come to the point where we would have to cite them for termination, and we would bring them before this board. So we felt that it was imperative that we really just outline to you what the guidelines are and the reason that we have made this change, this correction, and what our position is moving forward with our respiratory plan. So with that, that is basically the gist of why we made the change. I will certainly open it up to questions, any questions you may have of Jessica, Kamala, or I. Sorry.
Douglas Young.
Yes, thank you. Are you experiencing a good deal of noncompliance, or do you have any sense of the noncompliance that you might see?
So, and I'll yield to Kamala to answer this, but right now, we're previous to the policy change, we had about 95 personnel who had a letter from a doctor indicating that they could not be clean shaven for one reason or another. And so to date, I believe we only have 2 that have been referred to HR because they're not in compliance. But let me turn it over to Kamala for further on that.
Can you hear me?
We can.
Okay. Thank you. So as DC Patterson said, originally we had 94 individuals who had some kind of exemption. The policy became into effect on the 1st. Obviously, this has been a bit of a challenging week to kind of monitor numbers with everything that's been going on. But we have been made in HR of 2 individuals who have been asked to go home as per the policy guidance in regards to the fact that they have not been in compliance. And we have an individual who has provided medical documentation, and our procedures are now that you have 30 days to obtain treatment, and at the end of those 30 days, you are expected to be compliant. Failing that, we will take the next steps, which are we would send you to our own doctor as in regard to the city doctor. But potentially it could lead to, obviously, you not being found to be compliant to meet the requirements of a police officer, which is that you must be clean shaven to be able to don the OSHA mask as an OSHA regulation.
Thank you.
Ms. Charlita, Vice Chair.
Good afternoon. Just a quick question on just levels. So we have the policy and it sounds like you guys are working with them, but as we anticipate worst case scenario, people coming before the board, is there an expectation of like the written warning that it sounds like and, you know, working levels beforehand? So it would not be immediate. Okay.
Absolutely. Would you like me to kind of explain the levels of the process for you? So
Yes.
Initially we gave everybody just a little bit over 30 days to be able to become compliant. So that's a fair, reasonable amount of time to understand that there's a policy change coming into effect and to seek professional, help, treatment, etc. from their doctor. If by any chance, the doctor says, hey, we're not going to be able to get you compliant by the 1st, you would provide a medical note which would outline what your treatment plan is. The expectation is within 30 days that treatment would cure any issues in regards to, obviously I'm not a doctor, but anything medically that would prevent you from being clean shaven. And that is, we've done some research, so that's quite a reasonable expectation. If after 30 days you still are not in compliance, even with the medical note that we've allowed you to, have some treatment, at that time, obviously the 30 days, you'd be also placed on light duty, okay? We would send you for a second opinion, which would be the city medical doctor. That would be with my clinic, who the city has a contract with. And, based on whatever those findings are, we would then go to the next stage, which would potentially be sending you for fit for duty because you are required to wear that mask as part of your, as you can see right now, responsibilities. If you're not able to do so, then you can't fulfill the requirements of your role as a police officer. Thank you.
One thing that I think you might be curious and wondering, or you might get some information about is some officers have questioned whether there's an alternative mask that we could provide that would allow them to have facial hair. Based on our profession and based on the level or the types of chemical agents that we could be exposed to, we have chosen as an organization the M120 gas mask, which is common for most law enforcement agencies. So this is the most effective mask. We consulted with our safety officer, our safety coordinator for the department, who is really an expert in OSHA regulations, also an expert in chemical munitions and that kind of thing. And so this is the mask of choice for us. There are other gas masks or other respiratory devices out in the field that we could use, but they would not be effective for the kind of work that we do, would not provide the level of safety that we want for our personnel. So after much research, we have chosen this particular mask. We have found in the last couple of days with our officers being out in the environment with the unrest that agitators, protesters are within close proximity of an officer. If we had a different kind of mask, it could be easily compromised, taken off. So I think our selection to go with this particular mask is appropriate for us, and it provides the highest level of safety. It is also the same kind of gas mask that is used in the military. So we feel as an organization that this is best for our needs.
Ms. Carolyn?
Just real quick question. Is this standard for every level of the police department, for every individual, no matter what rank?
I can answer that question. Yes.
Thank you.
And let me add to that is every police officer, when they are hired for the position of police officer, they are given a list of all the essential job duties. And within that is that you must be able to don and properly wear the mask. And we have found, quite interestingly, is that all our recruits, almost 100% of them, when they come through the academy, because they have to be clean shaven, we don't have anyone saying that they cannot be clean shaven. We find that the issue is once they graduate from the academy, then we start to get the letters of somebody saying, I have a medical condition or I can't shave. So it's very interesting to us, that dynamic. Also to some of our personnel who are in the military, because some MOSs in the military, you have to don a gas mask, you have to be clean shaven. Some of our personnel are in the Guard, they're in the reserves. And when they go for their drill duties, that they are able to be clean shaven, but then they come back to CMPD and we find that they then ask for an exception. So we've looked at those dynamics and we know that for the highest safety of our personnel, we want them to be in the best environment that they can be, and being able to don this mask, wear it properly, is very important for us.
And just to add to Carolyn's question, there are also civilian departments which are required to wear a mask as part of their essential function. So obviously, you all govern over in regards to sworn, but just to let you know that this is also for all employees whose roles require you to wear a gas mask as part of your essential functions.
Thank you very much for that.
Are there any other questions? All right, thanks, Deputy Chief.
Okay, thank you all. And certainly if you have any follow-up questions, you can email or get them to Stephanie and she'll be sure to get them to us.
Thank you. Have a great day.
Yes, sir.
Thank you. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Okay, we'll move on to the the consideration of CMPD new hires. With this. As you know, I'll go ahead and name off the names of the candidates for recruit class 186. If you need to announce, or as I read them off, I'll go slower, so we'll look for your hands raised to see if you want them to be pulled. And everyone should know how to get to closed session if we have to go to closed session. So I'll go ahead and start off with the reading of the names, and again, I'll be slow. Khalid Michael Alston, Parker Chase Baxley, Michael Edward Bedard, Shane Williams Billings. Pull Shane William Billings.
Correct.
Wendell DeAndre Blue, Christian Jacob Campbell, Frank Michael DeFeo. Pull Frank Michael DeFeo. Colton Michael Fuller, Anthony Gonzalez, Denjel Jamal Green, Kashawn Javal Hines, Amber Nicole Kipe, Joseph Daniel Miller, Kyle Edward Millslegel, Gregory Scott Moore, Christopher Thomas Murphy, Thomas James Robinson, Joseph Timothy Sullivan, Devin Thomas Wilson. And if I mispronounce your name, I apologize in advance or after fact. All right, so we have the two, Shane William Billings and Frank Michael DeFeo, to be pulled. With that, may I have a motion to go into closed session? If you could, raise your hand.
So move.
Was that Doug or is that Tom?
Tom.
Okay. Tom was the first motion. May I have a second?
Second it.
Okay. Roll call.
Tom Baldwin,
Aye.
Charlita Hatch,
Aye.
Kyle Clements,
Aye.
David McCleary,
Aye.
Ryan McGill,
Aye.
Carolyn Millen,
Aye.
Chris Reynolds,
Aye.
Doug Young.
Aye.
Okay, so now we are going to enter into closed session. Please go to the link provided. Okay, we are back into open sessions. So with that, I'd like to ask for a motion to approve the candidates for recruit class 186. If you could, please raise your hand. Ms. Charlita Hatch, she made the motion. May I have a second? Oh, actually, Charlita, you have to say it. Sorry.
So moved.
Seconded.
Ms. Carolyn. Carolyn. Okay. Carolyn, you seconded. Do you have a question?
I just seconded.
Cool, thank you. We'll go with a roll call, please.
Tom Baldwin. Okay. Can we have Studio follow up? Wendy. Charlita Hatch.
Aye.
Kyle Clements.
Aye.
David McCleary.
Aye.
Ryan McGill.
Aye.
Carolyn Millen.
Aye.
Chris Reynolds.
Aye.
And Doug Young.
Aye.
Okay, so Tom didn't make it on here yet. I thought we had him on. So, we're going to go ahead and continue forward. If we could now move on to agenda item 6, the CFD presentations for the 2020 Engineers Competency Exam. I think Deputy Chief Winkles is on the line, and if you could, here's your presentation. Please remember that when you need the slide turned, please let Miss Wendy know.
And Chief, all of your slides are not on the presentation, just the first 6 slides of your presentation.
All right. Can y'all hear me okay?
Yes, sir, we can.
All right. So you can go to slide 2. So as you can see from slide 1, about a year ago, we had several work groups that were put together on various topics, one of them being promotional processes. And so we had a cross-section of members of the department that actually came together and gave us several recommendations as far as different ranks and some of the things they would like to see that would go on. And one of those that came to fruition recently was the Firefighter 2 that I presented to you recently. In addition to that, we had recommendations that came out of the promotional group and from different town hall meeting style where we go out to different stations and we talk to captains and firefighters in large groups, and they can kind of give us questions and all. And so we've had some of the things that came up dealing with the engineers process, one of which we had a captain ask us one time how you can have an engineers process without a driving portion. So to tell you why that's needed, one of the ranks that we have here at Charlotte Fire Department is the rank of engineer, and that is the individual that is responsible for driving the apparatus, whether it be in an engine or a ladder company or a rescue company or specialty apparatus, such as at the airport. We have people that hold the rank of engineer that falls between Firefighter 2 and captain level, and that rank is responsible for both driving the apparatus and operating the apparatus safely to and from the scene, and while at the scene, that aids in our mitigation efforts, especially at fires and other incidents such as that. So part of this, what we did was similar to the Firefighter 2 is we reached out to the department, said that we were doing a focus group to actually look at the engineer's practical portion of the test. Now, we had gone out to bid and got an outside vendor to actually do the written test, and it's the same outside vendor that we're using for both the captains and battalion chiefs and division chiefs test, Morrison McDaniels. So they'll be performing the written test. But as far as the actual practical test, we put together this focus group that was able to come in and give recommendations on how to actually do the practical test. Once they got done with their recommendations, then they actually presented it to the fire chief and the command staff and members of the command staff. And then after that, it actually went to Sheila Simpson, the HR director, to make sure that she approved of the process for this test. And so basically the testing process, the test is based on demonstration of the skills needed to perform as an engineer, and the test addresses skills the candidate should be proficient in based on the career development as a firefighter too. And so next slide, please. So as part of the testing process, we always have a written portion. In the written portion, we take the top 50 plus any ties, considering if there's a cutoff score. So this year, we'll take the written test, and the top 50 of the written test plus any ties will go and move forward into the practical portion. So that'll be a test that's offered over a course of 5 days. They'll have to sign a waiver saying that they won't disclose any information in the test, and we're very careful to try to keep the integrity of the test as we proceed through there, just as we've done in years past. We'll essentially have 2 candidates per hour that will be scheduled, and all the candidates, as I said, will have that non-agreement. So the next slide, please. So the testing process itself is they'll be presented with a series of scenarios, and they'll have to maintain consistency throughout the process. The process actually has 3 different courses or 3 different stations, and one of those is a driving course. And so this driving course, in order to always make sure that anything that we do is verified and validated, we rely on both the Office of State Fire Marshal and other entities to which we teach to make sure that we always pick job performance requirements that contain knowledge, skills, and abilities that have been validated. So in this case, we utilize a driving course that is recognized by the VFIS. And this is an entity that teaches driving safety throughout the nation to firefighters, and it is a driving course that is timed, and it has specific elements in there to make sure that they can operate the truck in a closed course in a safe manner. And it provides a very objective way of viewing an individual's ability to drive and handle an apparatus. And then we also relied on some of the job performance requirements as laid out by the Office of State Fire Marshal. They have a certification board, and this certification board maintains which certifications that the entire state of North Carolina adhere to, and they have JPRs inside those, and we utilize all the JPRs within those certifications to make sure that they have been validated and vetted out, and we just didn't create something separately so that everybody would know where they came from. And in fact, we sent all of this information out ahead of time so that anyone that desires to take this test actually can see the driving course. There's a actual printout of the driving course on the informational bulletin that we sent out. It has all the distances on there so they can recreate it while they're at the station. They can go to a parking lot and recreate elements of it. It has all the times. It has everything on there, and it even has the ability for them to Google it and actually go to VFIS's website and see everything about the driving course. In addition, we put all the job performance requirement links on there so that they can actually go to the link, download everything, and they have every one of the job performance requirements that we would test on. So that, in addition to the 2 I mentioned, the driving course and the Firefighter 2 job performance demonstration and identification, we have the apparatus pumping, which is one of the most crucial parts of it. So in that, again, they're linked to job performance requirements that have been verified and validated through the classes that we teach at the academy, and they basically have to demonstrate their ability to pump the apparatus efficiently and effectively at the right pressures. And this provides, obviously, safety and the ability to mitigate the incidents that we pull up on, especially the fires. Each one of these has been weighted within just this section. So we have a weight on the written test, and then we have a weight on this individual test within this one. And so you have 30% of the assessment center is for the driving course, 20% is for the Firefighter 2 job performance demonstration and identification. And it's important to note that all members going for the rank of engineer have to be a firefighter 2 for a minimum of 1 year prior to being able to test for our policy 20601. And so these are abilities that are actually taught to them in recruit class, and then they have to demonstrate them efficiently and effectively in recruit class and pass the certification test. And then in order to come off of probation per 21202, they have to actually do several of these same job functions. And then to become a firefighter 2 now, these same job performance requirements are in the competency test that we hold, and now they're seen again in the engineer's test, so that you can see there's a direct line from the time they graduate recruit class through the 1 year probation. Within our continuing education model, these JPRs are reinforced, firefighter 2, and then up through engineer. And then finally is the apparatus pumping course, which again is one of the most important parts, and that is 50%. Each candidate must score a minimum of 70% on each evaluated skill, which essentially means that's the baseline that we chose, and that means that up to 30% of that skill could be missed, and that is what we don't want to get away from. We want to make sure that you understand that each of these skills is vital in the success of what the department does, whether it be the driving portion, the tool identification portion within the firefighter 2, or the pumping, obviously. And then basically the rest of the slideshow that you have basically walks you through how the stations will be set up. They'll move from station to station. We've got this work group, focus group that has assessors that are going to be at each station to make sure the candidates are walked and there's no cross-contamination of the candidate. We'll have HR element down there checking people in and checking people out as needed. And throughout this, we look for a successful testing process that really moves beyond what it has been in the past couple years, which was just the pumping scenario, to now it's actually encompassing all elements of the job as an engineer. So with that, I'm going to walk you, I'm going to obviously see if you have any questions.
Do we have any questions? I guess the only question is, when does this start?
I have a question.
Great. Go ahead, Chris.
How many of our command staff have been engineers? So I just would be curious to how much of our staff, the upper people, have been engineers, and for how long were they engineers?
Well, I can speak for myself here. I was an engineer, and actually when I became an engineer in 2002, well, before that, I was actually, my first job, I was hired as an engineer for Monroe Public Safety. And so they actually hired me, and I was part of a public safety system to which I drove the truck by myself, and I operated the truck on my own. So I know that I was an engineer then, and then I pivoted over to Charlotte Fire, where I worked myself up through the ranks, and then I was an engineer for a period before I became obviously before I got here, before I became a captain. And just to give you a little bit of a cross-section or idea of what the working group was, we did reach out and had a battalion chief that was in charge of the working group, and this battalion chief was an engineer for a few years. I don't have the number of years in front of me, I apologize. And then we also had engineers on that work group, as well as a captain on the work group captains on the work group that teach the engineer classes at the academy, and also our fleet manager that has performed the pumping evolutions in the past. So as far as the rest of the command staff, I can't speak for them right now, but I can tell you I was an engineer for a short period of time, and I wasn't in the work group, but I did have a work group that had engineers within that work group and a BC that headed the work group that was an engineer for several years.
And Ms. Stephanie said she will get any other information that you need for the other command staff sent out to you if you want that. We have 10 minutes until we have to be logged off of this for the next event. So if there's any...
That would be great. Thanks.
Great. And then the last one, Deputy Chief, is when is this set to begin?
So we're in the phase right now where they're signing up June 1st through, and you have to excuse me, I don't have the informational bulletin in front of me, and it's been a long weekend, but so for about 20 days they're signing up, and then it'll actually take place, the written test will take place next month, and then we'll schedule the actual assessment center. And I don't have the informational bulletin in front of me, but they've been aware of the dates of these tests since September of 2019.
Great. Thank you, sir.
And I can send you that informational bulletin if you'd like, that has all the ranks on it and the test dates on there.
Please do. Thank you, sir. Okay, we're going to move on to...
Not having that.
Go ahead.
You go ahead, sir.
Okay. Yeah, if you could, that'd be great. We'll go ahead and move on. We're going to move on to the consideration of the CFD promotions. We had two new promotions that was added to an amended email. All the board members should have received those. I'll go ahead. I'm going to name off the promotion to firefighter engineer first, and then we'll vote on those, and we'll do promotion to fire captain, and then last, battalion fire chief. I'll go ahead and name those off. It's going to be, if you have anyone that you'd like to pull and talk about, please let me know. But we'll start. Firefighter engineer, Robert Bloomberg, Edward DeFranzo, Christopher King, Jonathan Morrison, Raymond Murphy III, Omar Casso, and Christopher Rabeau. May I call on a motion to promote these individuals to firefighter engineer?
Motion to approve. This is Carolyn.
Second, Tom.
Great. Roll call.
Tom Baldwin,
Aye.
Charlita Hatch,
Aye.
Kyle Clements,
Aye.
David McCleary,
Aye.
Ryan McGill,
Aye.
Carolyn Millen,
Aye.
Chris Reynolds,
Aye.
and Doug Young.
Aye.
It's unanimous.
All right. Moving on to the promotion to fire captain. Mario Arango, Eric DiPolo, Anthony Huto, Matthew Mizenheimer, Todd Robatali, Brett Sykes, Timothy Smith. May I get a motion to promote to fire captain?
So moved.
And was it Chris the other, or?
Seconded, Carolyn.
Okay. Roll call.
Tom Baldwin,
Aye.
Charlita Hatch,
Aye.
Kyle Clements,
Aye.
David McCleary,
Aye.
Ryan McGill,
Aye.
Carolyn Millen,
Aye.
Chris Reynolds,
Aye.
and Doug Young.
Aye.
It's unanimous.
Yes. And last, promotion to battalion fire chief be Derek Cooper and Jeffrey Redden. Please, may I call on a motion to promote to battalion fire chief?
So move, Tom.
May I have a second?
Seconded, Carolyn.
All right, roll call.
Tom Baldwin,
Aye.
Charlita Hatch,
Aye.
Kyle Clements,
Aye.
David McCleary,
Aye.
Ryan McGill,
Aye.
Carolyn Millen,
Aye.
Chris Reynolds,
Aye.
and Doug Young.
Aye.
It's unanimous.
All right. Congratulations to all the new promoted firefighters.
You're here.
Yep. Moving on, I guess we'll get a few more minutes. It's last one, other business. No other business. Chief Winkles and firefighters, thank you for what you're doing out there. Police department, same, thank you. There's no other business to discuss. With that, may I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved. Tom?
And may I have a second?
Second, Carol.
Carolyn. All right, I will just call it as a roll call. Or just all in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed? All right.
Good to see everybody.
Great to see you.
Yes.
Stay safe out there.
Yep.
Enjoy your day. Thank you.
Stay safe, y'all.